The radical changes which will need to be undertaken on the W14 to bring it back to its competitiveness has gotten a little bit clearer today, with Andrew Chauvelin confirming that changes will arrive on the W14. And with that comes the added news on just exactly what these changes are going to be, what they require to be able to install them on the cars themselves, and the kind of timeline for how long it's going to take for these changes to take effect on the car itself. This comes after a lackluster Bahrain Grand Prix opening weekend of the 2023 Formula 1 season, when they all came to the realization a lot of changes had to be made. But people may think this is going to happen instantaneously, but that is not going to be the case. It's going to take a lot of time, with Andrew Chauvelin having this to say on that very matter. People tend to use the word concept when referring to the design of the side pods. Total recently said that we will be working on a revision, which will arrive in the next few weeks anyway. Given the gap from the top teams, we will certainly see radical changes. But these solutions take time to become solutions that lead to an improvement in the wind tunnel. These are not things that can be done overnight. Now, with these radical changes, there are two main areas of improvement that they want to target with them. And that is, of course, going to be the gap in qualifying and race trim. Chauvelin went on to state that they have a lot of work to do. The gap in qualifying was really important, as we were over half a second off pole. But in the race, the gap was even bigger. And that comes from the fact that when you start to get degradation on the tyres, they start to slip and heat up, and it becomes more difficult to keep things under control. So there are several things that we need to work on, such as improving the degradation, because last year that was one of our strengths. But more generally, we have to work to close the gap to the front. We are working very hard to understand what we can do both in the short and medium term to find ourselves in a better situation. So again, stating the fact of what they want to achieve with these updates, but also making sure people are under no illusion to the fact that it's going to take a lot of time and effort on the team's behalf to get in a place where they can actually put these changes on the car to help make the car more competitive in race situations. But before we go any further in talking about what the team are trying to achieve with these updates to the car, if you're new around here, consider subscribing to the channel, as I will also be holding over the next Grand Prix weekend a competition for all the subscribers to this channel, where 3 of you will win teamwear from your favourite Formula 1 team. So be on the lookout for that as well. Now, why exactly are the team targeting better tyre wear? Well, let's go back over the Bahrain Grand Prix race. Now, when you look at the data in terms of lap times, you can see that there is a massive lap time difference between those 3 teams when you compare it to Mercedes. And this is the gap they're going to have to try and claw back with these updates. Because on average throughout the race, they were lapping over a second slower than that of Red Bull per lap. And this is a massive disadvantage to be at in a race situation, and one which is really difficult to overturn in a whole season, let alone in the short to medium term. So there's going to have to be a lot of head scratching to go over the data, to look at the kind of tyre degradation that they got throughout the race and what it was that was actually the cause for it. And perhaps even looking back at the W13 in terms of its components, maybe the suspension geometry on the W13 helped to make the tyre wear and the tyre life as well last that much longer than the W14's rear suspension that it currently has. But yeah, on general, even after looking at Red Bull, if we go over the likes of Aston Martin, they were extremely quicker than them as well. Tyre degradation was not an issue for Aston Martin, where it was for Mercedes. And this helped Fernando Alonso, even considering the fact that he had a very poor start to the race and dropped all the way back down to 7th. He eventually made his way through the field, through Hamilton, through Russell, through Sainz, and potentially may have gotten quite close to Leclerc if he hadn't have retired. And this just shows the superiority that the Aston Martin has over Mercedes in terms of looking after its tyres and the tyre life. Now, second to all of that, of course, is just the natural pace inherently within the car itself. And that becomes when we're talking about the 1 lap pace that they can get out of the car in qualifying, and being over half a second behind is of course another massive gap and of course a massive problem for them to try and solve. So I think that is something, there's only one way to improve that is bolting on more downforce onto the overall package. That's nothing to do with the tyre life, it's how your tyres interact with your car and the setup window that your car allows you to operate in, which I think is something they're going to have to really, pay attention to when they go about with these changes. But I would say out of these two factors, the main situation and problem they have to get a hold of will be race pace and tyre wear. If they cannot get a hold on that, they're never going to be anywhere near the front, let alone fighting for a championship, although that is completely off the cards for this year. I think already, I know it's quite a dramatic statement to make after just one race, but I can't see any team touching Red Bull. I think they're pretty much untouchable this season, unless the budget cap that they have and the lack of wind tunnel time plays a factor. I think it's going to be really difficult for the likes of Ferrari and Mercedes to catch up. I think, ironically, the one team out of these 4 teams that we've mentioned in this video that is in the driving seat to make a substantial charge this season is going to be Aston Martin, actually, because let's not forget they finished 7th, whereas Red Bull finished 1st in the Constructors' Championship. So that is a huge percentage over Red Bull that they will have in terms of having time in the wind tunnels and with CFD. And they've also talked about how they're going to make changes to 2/3 over their car throughout the course of the rest of this season, which could see a huge lap time leap when it comes to their AMR 23. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting middle portion and beginning to the season for all you Mercedes fans out there, and I think it's going to be a little bit of patience and just putting up with the short-term pain for long-term benefits and happiness. So yeah, that is the video, guys. I hope you've all enjoyed it. If you have, leave a like on this video, subscribe if you're new around here, and I will catch you all in another F1 video.